And we could admit everybody. Good evening. My name is Bernard Oro, and I'm with the Con Planning section of the Community Investment for Families Department. On behalf of our team, I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us tonight. Please note that no AI bots will be allowed in the meeting. AI bots will be exited from the virtual meeting. Please do not use your email or personal information, as this recording will later be made available publicly on YouTube. We would also like to share that we do have closed captioning and Spanish interpretation options are available to every participant. For closed captioning in English, you can select the CC symbol at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom menu. For Spanish interpretation, you can select the globe symbol, also found at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom menu, which will take you to the room with the interpreters. Closed captioning in Spanish is also available in this room. If you do not see the CC or globe symbols in your Zoom menu, please look for it in the submenu where it says More with the 3 dots.
Y ahora en español, para los oyentes de español, los participantes tienen a su disposición subtítulos e interpretación en español. Para subtítulos en inglés, puedes seleccionar el símbolo CC en la parte inferior de la pantalla en el menú de Zoom. Para interpretación en español, puedes seleccionar el símbolo del globo también en la parte inferior de la pantalla, que le llevará a la sala con los intérpretes. Allí también están disponibles los subtítulos en español. Si no ve el símbolo CC o el globo en el menú de Zoom, búsquelo en el submenú con la palabra en inglés More, M-O-R-E, con los 3 puntos.
And now here's a notice to paid representatives. If you are compensated to monitor, attend, or speak at this meeting, city law may require you to register as a lobbyist and report your activity. The Los Angeles Municipal Code SS 48.01 at SEC. More information is available at ethics.lacity.org/lobby. For assistance, please contact the Ethics Commission at area code 213-978-1960 or email them at ethics.commission@lacity.org.
Ahora en español, el aviso para representantes pagados. Si recibe compensación para monitorear, asistir o hablar en esta reunión, la ley de la ciudad puede exigirle que se registre como calvidero o calvidera, también conocida como lobbyist, e informe su actividad. Favor de referirse al Código Municipal de la Ciudad de Los Ángeles en la sección 48.01, etc. Más información disponible en la página de la siguiente: ethics.lacity.org/lobbying. Para asistencia, contacta a la Comisión de Ética al 213-978-1960 o en la página de web ethics.commission@lacity.org. And now I'll give a few moments for folks to find the options we just discussed. I'll go ahead and make another couple of remarks. I want to share that links to the Community Investment for Family Department's mailing list and social media pages will be shared in the chat as a part of this Zoom meeting. We will also hold a question and answer session after the presentation. Please put questions in the general chat that is directed to everyone. not to a single individual. I'd also like to introduce myself. You've heard me a few moments ago in Spanish, and you will also hear me make some remarks throughout the presentation. My name is Rebecca Ronquillo, and I'm the Chief Management Analyst with the Community Investment for Families Department, and I manage the consolidated plan along with a team, a lot of which are here to assist you and share vital information for you. Next slide. I just want to give a bit of a roadmap to all of us here assembled as far as what you should expect in the way of information. We are very honored and proud to have our colleagues in the mayor's office provide some remarks, and I will introduce our deputy mayor and chief equity officer for the mayor's office of economic opportunity very soon. Brenda will share some of her remarks. We'll also go over some high-level information as it relates to what the consolidated plan is, how this plan is compiled. We'll also give some highlights as far as what the next year's program, your proposed projects might look like. And as I mentioned just a few moments ago, we'll have a space for questions and answers. I'll also plug our community survey, which is part and goes hand in hand with this outreach as far as communicating what your impressions are, what your observations and wants and needs are for this consolidated plan. And then we'll save some space at the end for some closing remarks. So now what I would like to do is introduce Ms. Brenda Shockley, who is our Deputy Mayor and Chief Equity Officer for the Mayor's Office of Economic Opportunity. Brenda, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you for some brief remarks. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Absolutely. And thank you, Rebecca. Thank you and the Community Investment and Families Department for your hard work and for convening this really important opportunity for the community to weigh in on the con plan. On behalf, and I looked at the gallery, and I really, on behalf of Mayor Karen Bass, I want to welcome you to this convening, but also to really, really commend you, the number of you that have turned out to give input, to listen, to advise, but also to engage. That the con plan, these federal funds, the community development grant funds, are for community-driven projects that will revitalize our communities and our neighborhoods, projects that will not only meet the mayor's priorities, but also acknowledge and make every attempt to address the community priorities, which are in many ways very much the same. But there are specific projects. As Rebecca says, this is, there's a proposal, but that proposal doesn't go forward until you have a chance to weigh in. This is not something that's done after the fact. This is not something we do and then tell you about it. This is something that in real time, the questions, the answers, your input is really critical to how the city develops this plan. And it's very important that your voices be heard. And I looked at a number of you who are with nonprofits, as I spent many years doing, the voices that you are representing. That it is so critical because we have such a large city, not to assume that what one community wants, another would need, or that we at a distance know what is best. This is truly an opportunity. You are talking to people who are not only committed, but people who listen and who remember. And so please take this opportunity, weigh in, speak on behalf of yourself, but also the neighborhoods that you represent. And know that Mayor Karen Bass really appreciates and commends your civic and community engagement. So I'm looking forward to the presentation as well, and to your questions and answers and to your input. Again, thank you so much for participating.
Thank you so much for that, Deputy Mayor Brenda Shockley. And at this point, I do want to hand it off to one of our able team members, Aaron Arevalo, he works on our comp planning team, and him with the rest of our able team will go ahead now and go through our slideshow. And again, share your questions as you have them in the chat. We will have some space at the bottom of this presentation to get to as many of those questions, if not all of them. So I'll now hand it off to Aaron.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Aaron Arevalo. Thank you for joining us. I'll be presenting the first half of this presentation, and with that, let's get it started. What is the Consolidated Plan? The Consolidated Plan, called the CON Plan, is how the City of Los Angeles uses money from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, to support housing and community needs for people with low to moderate income. HUD gives this money to the city. The mayor and the city council decide then how to use it, and the Community Investment for Families Department writes and submits this plan to HUD. There are 4 grants in the plan, which is why it's called the Consolidated Plan. CIFD manages these funds, makes sure the city follows federal rules, and gathers community input from meetings such as this. The money goes to groups across the city for housing, services, and neighborhood improvements. Next slide. So this is very important, but these things are very important, but they're not funded by these grants. We understand that public transportation, police services, and schools are critical to daily life in our communities. However, the federal funds in the Consolidated Plan cannot be used to support these services. The grants we are discussing today are focused on housing, economic development, neighborhood improvements, and public services related to poverty reduction and homelessness. Next slide. The Consolidated Plan includes 4 separate federal grants. First, the Community Development Block Grant, known as CDBG, is the largest, long-running, and most flexible of the 4. It can support a wide range of programs that serve low and moderate income residents. The Home Investment Partnerships Program, called HOME, focuses on expanding affordable housing. It is primarily used to help or build or improve housing that low-income individuals and families can afford. The Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG, is used to support people who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of becoming homeless. It helps fund shelters, outreach, and prevention programs. The 4th one, the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS program, or HOPWA, provides housing and supportive services to people living with HIV or AIDS who have low incomes. This program serves all of Los Angeles County, not just the city. Together, these 4 grants form the foundation of the Consolidated Plan. Next slide, please. Each grant has its own set of federal rules about who can receive assistance. These rules are based on factors like income, housing status, and in some cases, health conditions and diagnoses. Programs funded by these grants must follow HUD's eligibility guidelines to ensure funds are used properly and reach the people most in need. So we'll go over some of the examples of the eligible activities for these 4 different entitlements. First is the Community Development Block Grant. This supports community development activities to build stronger communities. Eligible activities include housing preservation, other property improvements, public facilities, public services, and economic development. Home Investment Partnerships supports increased homeownership and affordable housing. Eligible activities include affordable housing construction, housing rehabilitation, site acquisition and preparation, home buyer assistance, and rental assistance. Next is the Emergency Solutions Grant. This assists those experiencing a housing crisis or homelessness to quickly regain stability. Eligible activities include street outreach, emergency shelter, rapid rehousing assistance, and the Homeless Management Information Systems, or HMIS. The 4th one is Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS. This provides housing and services to low-income persons with HIV and AIDS, or AIDS. Eligible activities include rental assistance, case management, supportive services, operation costs, and affordable housing construction. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the process. For the process of the administration of the annual plan, the first step in creating the annual plan is to gather input from the public. Next, City staff reviews existing programs to decide which ones should continue receiving funding. Some programs are ongoing and require annual support, like the Family Source Centers and HOPWA services. At the same time, staff evaluates whether new projects can be funded. It's important to note that only 15% of CDBG funding can be used for public services. Once the mayor and city council are consulted, and if funding is available, a formal application process opens. City departments and nonprofit organizations can apply for grants to support eligible projects. Applications are reviewed based on how well they meet HUD guidelines, how quickly they can use the funds, and whether they support the 5 main goals of the comp plan itself. After that, the mayor releases a proposed budget and plan. The public has an opportunity to provide feedback. Once all comments have been reviewed and adjustments to the plan are made, the chief legislative analyst, mayor, and city council approve the final version. Finally, the city submits the plan to HUD. After HUD gives its approval, contracts are signed and funded projects can begin. Next slide, please. So the city prioritizes projects that support the local economy, develop and preserve affordable housing, significantly reduce poverty, prevent and reduce homelessness, and stabilize neighborhoods. Let's talk a little more about that. Every 5 years, the city creates a long-term plan for how these grants will be used. Program year 52 is year 4 of the current 5-year plan. Each year, the city funds programs that support the 5 main goals. The first is to prevent and reduce homelessness. This includes shelter services, case management, rental assistance, and eviction prevention. The second is to create and preserve affordable housing. This covers new construction, housing repairs, and programs for first-time homebuyers. The third goal is to reduce poverty by supporting services that help residents raise their earning potential, build savings, find stable housing, and succeed in school or work. The fourth is to support the local economy. This includes helping small businesses grow and bring more goods and services into underserved neighborhoods. The fifth goal is to stabilize neighborhoods by improving public spaces like parks, streets, and community facilities, making them safer and more accessible for everyone. Thank you for your attention in this first portion. Now I'm going to hand off the presentation back to Rebecca for another announcement reminder.
Thank you, Erin. So the reminder will be around the closed captioning. Again, closed captioning for the Spanish interpretation options are available to participants. For closed captioning in English, you can select the CC symbol at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom menu. For Spanish interpretation, you can select the globe symbol also found at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom menu, which will take you to the room with the interpreters. Closed captioning in Spanish is also available there. If you do not see the CC or globe symbols in your Zoom menu, please look for it in the submenu where it may say more with the 3 dots. And in Spanish, los participantes tienen a su disposición subtítulos e interpretación en español. Para subtítulos en inglés, puedes seleccionar el símbolo CC en la parte inferior de la pantalla en el menú de Zoom. Para interpretación en español, puedes seleccionar el símbolo del globo también en la parte inferior de la pantalla que le llevará a la sala con los intérpretes. Allí también están disponibles los subtítulos en español. Si no ve el símbolo CC o el globo en el menú de Zoom, búsquelo en el submenú con la palabra en inglés More con los 3 puntos. And now I believe my colleague Madeline will be taking on the next set of slides.
Thank you, Rebecca. Hi, my name is Madeline Molina, and I am also part of the Consolidated Planning team with CIFD. And I will be going over the estimated funding distribution next. There are 5 categories that are funded in the con plan. The mayor's proposed budget allocates the following amounts to each category in totality: approximately $12 million for a combination of $8 million to public services and $4 to LASA under the general umbrella of public services, $14 million approximately for economic development, $64 million for housing and related programs, $16 million for public facilities and neighborhood improvements, and lastly, $15 million for planning and administration. And this is the distribution of all of the 4 grants together. So some of these categories are supported by only one grant or by multiple grants. Next slide, please. For public services in LASA, the Community Development Block Grant, or as we've been calling it, CDBG, allows cities to use portions of their funding to support these types of services and programs that address a wide range of community needs, such as job training, crime prevention, childcare, health services, substance abuse treatment, fair housing counseling, and even educational support. Services for senior citizens and people experiencing homelessness are also included in these categories. And you may be familiar with or work with or have been a participant in one of these programs. One of the flagship programs we support through CDBG in particular is our Family Source Centers, which help families to achieve financial stability and support the entire family to lift themselves out of poverty. We also support the domestic violence and human trafficking shelter operations, which we have listed on our budget under survivor services. In addition, the Emergency Solutions Grant funds another critical set of programs that address homelessness. These include emergency shelter services and programs designated to prevent people from becoming homeless or to quickly rehouse the ones that already are. Next slide, please. Several of the city's housing programs receive funding through a combination of CDBG home and HOPWA funds. One of the key initiatives is new construction as well as preservation. This program provides loans for acquiring land, pre-development activities, and construction or rehab of affordable rental housing. And those investments help increase the supply of housing that low-income residents can actually afford. Another example is the urgent repair program that's funded through CDBG, which provides emergency repairs to correct unsafe and hazardous conditions for rental housing units. Each of these programs plays a role in improving housing conditions and expanding access as well as maintaining affordability for all of the residents in LA. Next slide, please. The consolidated planning funds also support economic development programs that help local businesses and entrepreneurs to succeed. These programs are typically operated by community-based organizations that have an expertise with supporting small businesses and job training. Services could include technical assistance, business planning, specialized training for micro enterprises, and to entrepreneurs who come and from and who serve all of our least served communities. Programs like this, for example, the Healthy Neighborhood Market Network, are really good examples of how this sort of model can work by helping to provide additional, access to fresh, nutritious food where you might have a little bit of a food desert in an area where people can't travel very far and still need access to quality nutrition. So these types of efforts not only promote the economy alone, but there's a cycle of how they promote the overall health and wealth investment of each of these communities. The neighborhood improvement projects that are supported through consolidated plans are also another one of the major focuses of what we like to fund. These projects aim to enhance the physical environment in communities and improve the quality of life for residents. So these types of funds can be used to upgrade street lighting, renovate parks, improve senior centers, and other public spaces. The goal is to revitalize the neighborhood, and that in turn makes them safer, more accessible, and better equipped to service the needs of everyone who lives there. These investments help to build stronger and connected communities and in turn support long-term goals such as reducing crime, encouraging economic activity, more businesses to open up in those areas, and expand access to education and even recreation. Next slide, please. To successfully carry out the programs and the projects that we like to fund, you need a really good team. And that's what gets funded under administration and planning. A portion of the budget is allocated so that these funds can support staff and also systems that are required to manage the grant funds, oversee project implementation, and ensure compliance with all the federal, state, and local regulations. This includes preparing the budgets, monitoring contracts, processing payments, reporting all of the successes to HUD to show how we've implemented each of the programs and how they are actively revitalizing all of these neighborhoods. Strong administrative systems are essential to making sure that these grant funds are used effectively, with transparency, and in such a way that meets the needs of the community. And now I will hand the presentation back to Rebecca to go over the next section. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't unmute myself. Let me start over. So what you see here is a listing of additional resources by way of the departments that we do most frequently, that we partner with respect to how we have funds allocated or how we have funds made accessible either through city departments. And we also spoke about partnering with our nonprofits on the ground to provide services. But you'll see here with respect to specific programs or services that our sister departments across the city also deploy, you have sort of a shorthand here of how to get a hold of those folks. So you have everyone from the currently separate aging department to our partners in building and safety, and so on and so forth. So it's just a shorthand for you all. And as my colleagues mentioned earlier, this PowerPoint, the recording of this PowerPoint, this presentation will be made available on YouTube. So you'll have access to this at a later time if you don't happen to, have enough time to jot down some of these notes. But, to the extent you have questions about other programming that might be related as deployed by our colleagues in other departments, this is just a shorthand for you all to avail yourself of. So now we do have a section for questions and comments. We've gone through the information heavy slides for your digestion, for your consideration. A lot of good information was shared with you. And so now what we'll do is we'll start to go through some of these questions that have been posed in the chat. I have made note of a couple of them. And I'll just take them as I see them appear as I scroll down. There was a question posed. How can nonprofits get informed about when CDBG applications are open? This is a very good question. And in fact, it is the subject of our next slide. And maybe it's a good time to forward on to our next slide so that you could get a quick snapshot as far as how a couple of ways to get onto that list. I want to draw your attention as one way to the bottom of this slide, which is some information on how to sign up to receive regular emails that we share. For example, prompts to these community meetings, etc. You do want to subscribe to that mail list that's indicated at the bottom. It's a subscription-based list. So go onto our website, navigate through with this file path, or this email path rather, this website path, and get yourself signed up that way. You can also email us at cifd.planning@lacity.org. You can ask specifically to be included on our email list, and you can get information that way as well. You can call the number on your screen there, and this is a part of the presentation that I get ribbed about a little bit, because the number you see on this slide is in fact my direct line, and I do answer the phone. I respond to emails a lot quicker, but this number is a real number, and there is a live person at the other end of it, and that is myself. And you do want to something that I'm not fully comfortable with, but that you might have a lot of more facility with, is looking for our social platform handles and addresses that can also provide you real-time updates, not only on the consolidated plan, but the department in general, the Community Investment for Families Department. And that's something that you could find information on in our general website, the la4families.org website. So I will make that plug for that. The other sort of less formalized way that I would advise folks to keep track of the longer range comp plan or CDBG process or the application process is to make yourself known to your council district representation. They are in a very critical and important position to advocate for projects and efforts to be funded at that council district level. So it behooves you to make yourself known if you're not already known to your council district representation. Make yourself known to any and all elected officials. You have our colleagues in the mayor's office speak to how important it is and critical it is to make yourselves known and the ways that you could partner with us in terms of providing services and benefits to folks of low to moderate income households. So those are just a few ways that I would recommend or urge you to receive information specific to the application, but in general to the consolidated planning process as well. So that's one response. Let's see as we scroll down. We do see your comment regarding the situation in North Hollywood. That will be noted and that will be included in our larger consolidation, I guess is the best word, and collection of comments with respect to this comp plan process and this space for your feedback. So we'll duly note that. Thank you very much. And there's a question here with respect to who decides what we can afford as low-income people. Will someone on minimum wage be able to afford I believe it's a studio apartment and food at the same time? That's a very important question to be posed. One of the things that is challenging, quite frankly, about not only the community development block grant, but the 4 entitlement grants as a whole is that they're highly regulated. There are rules and regulations, statutes, and guidelines that govern how we're able to spend that money, and that includes national level calculated rent limits, income limits, as it relates to how low income is defined with respect to services that can be offered, housing that can be produced and made available to a range of low income households. And so, you know, the very specific or strict answer to your question as far as who decides with respect to these entitlement grants, these formula grants, it's very, very simply from on high, from the national level. It's a statistical calculation. It's using a number of variables at the national level, and that's how we receive guidance from the Housing and Urban Development Department. Next question here. How can these funds be used to help improve bicycle infrastructure? More shade, such as trees and road calming measures to reduce traffic violence. There's a very specific and narrow slice of the community development block grant that in the past has been used rather secondarily or tangentially to the specific needs that you're speaking about here in terms of infrastructure, calming measures, etc. As indicated in one of the slides that one of my colleagues presented, the community development block grant, and for that matter, the balance of the block grants, the Home Hop 1 ESG, they by and large do not allow for use with transportation, traffic infrastructure, things like traffic, transportation, police services and education are largely not included in the various uses for the 4-block grant. So something like this, with respect to how CDBG can come to bear, I know in the past we've had an opportunity to become present in larger street improvements with respect to ADA improvements, access to sidewalks. CDBG can be used specifically to remove street furniture to make ADA accessible sidewalks and things of that nature. That's just one example of how transportation infrastructure, bike infrastructure can be impacted or benefited with something like CDBG. The next question I see here, I was a neighborhood council budget advocate, and I have been advocating for more resources and investment in our neighborhood since, or especially low-income communities. I've listened to and attended many budget hearings. I've advocated for more funding. What can the city, mayor, and council do to ensure our neighborhoods get the attention they deserve? That's a fairly open-ended question. I would say your participation at these meetings is one way that you can add your specific needs to your specific neighborhood with respect to how CDBG or home or HOP or ESG even can come to bear specifically to the needs of the communities that you've advocated for. As I mentioned a few moments ago too, making yourself knowledgeable, accessing our website, taking some of the notes of the information that we presented here, is something that you can target specific questions to your council district representation, to your citywide elected officials that have some say in how these funds are allocated on an annual basis. So becoming informed on specific to your needs on what the various grants can come to bear can be something that you can exercise. I will say also that we do have an email address that's indicated here as far as specific questions you want to pose to me or anybody on my team, where we can have a conversation with you if you have a specific idea for a project, a specific idea for some service or effort that you're wondering whether it's eligible for any of the 4 grants. We can speak specifically to the Community Development Block Grant, and we can connect or find information on the balance of the other grants and how those funds are used. This is a very good question and a comment. Without specifics on the efforts that you have in mind with respect to your neighborhood or the area that you're most specifically advocating for, that's how I would respond to your question. But I would make use of the email addresses on your screen, the phone numbers, etc. Just as with the number on the screen, at that email address, there is staff at the other end of that email address that very specifically respond to emails that are submitted there for questions specific to the consolidated plan. So you can also pose your question via that method. Let's see. Why are you proposing to fund LASA given poor results in financial management? We will take your comment, Ms. White, to and consolidate it with the rest of our feedback here. This is a process that takes all feedback into account, including that feedback that raises serious concerns about how funds have been used. And again, all I can say to that is that your concern is heard. It will be communicated and added to the comp plan. Very specifically, the Housing and Urban Development Department at the local level, when they're tasked with reviewing the city's action plan, they do very specifically look for all the feedback that is provided to us through these meetings that we transcribe and that we summarize the comments to. Constructive, good, bad, everything in between. We add all of that. We do also collect and coalesce email comments that are submitted, and those are all submitted with the action plan as attachments to that plan. So those comments make their way at various levels, including and up to the federal level. So those are, that's how I'd respond to your question with respect to how these funds are being proposed to be used. Let's see. What about a LinkedIn page? My guess is that you're asking, why do we not have a LinkedIn page? We have a handful of other social platforms that you can access and subscribe to or sign up for or follow, I think is the terminology that's used. LinkedIn in particular, I don't know that as a city policy, we have opted to prepare a LinkedIn page with respect to getting the word out. But what I would say is do avail yourself. If not, follow our various social platform handles so that you can stay up to date with what the Community Investment for Families Department does, with what is happening around the comp plan, the consolidated plan, CDBG, etc. Next question. What program is or what programs are available for preventing evictions before they begin, before too much rent is missed? Once a rent threshold is missed, even in rent control, an eviction is filed, which results in a lot of stress and financial burden. The ultimate result is that someone loses their home. People need more help right now as the economy is too tough. I have two responses to that. One is, obviously, we will take your comment and your concern around the volume and the pace at which evictions are filed is concerning. It is high. We will take that comment. Obviously, this is a need that has been ongoing or a concern that has been ongoing across the city for some time now, pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, obviously. We do have programs through the Los Angeles Housing Department. Our colleagues in the housing department do have efforts and programs through their department that they manage that help with this respect. I know there's a hotline that the housing department also manages, a very concise and comprehensive website as well that can walk you through the different programs that the housing department may run in terms of eviction defense and those kinds of efforts. And so I would urge you to, once we finish this presentation and you have access to that list of resources, to avail yourself of the information through our housing department partners website to get as much information on that as possible.
All right, Rebecca. I can help to read out the questions if that helps.
Sure. Go right ahead.
The next one we have is from Christy Daniels. And it goes, the funding plan sounds fantastic regarding the categories and how projects are classified. What happens if an organization proposes a project or space that fits into multiple categories? For example, a space that serves partly as housing, partly as economic development, and partly as a public/community space. When accepting applications, will proposals need to fit strictly within one category, or will there be consideration for mixed category or multi-purpose projects?
Thank you, Andy. That's a very good question. Thank you for posing that, Ms. Daniels. I'm loath to respond to this question as it depends, but it very much depends on specifically the application that we receive on your end for, in this case, I would ask you, or I would ask an applicant that comes forth with some sort of funding gap or a need for funding. We have an application that's available currently online, and you can sort of make yourself familiar with the various questions that we ask. But when we get an application for CDBG funding, for example, Community Development Block Grant funding, we ask very specific questions with respect to the scope of the project, the project as a whole, with the portion or portions of that project that you intend to be funded with the community development block grant portion, for example. So if you're looking to get funding in part or in whole with CDBG, we look very specifically to what exactly it is that you're looking to get paid for, right? The funding, what is the funding going to get spent on? And so we start our analysis or our conversation that way. So, without knowing the specifics, so it's about the scope, number one, but we would also be very much interested in how much of the total funding that would bring your project to fruition do you bring to bear? How much has been secured? How much has not been secured? So part of our review, which looks very carefully at eligibility and what we can fund with the Community Development Block Grant, we also ask you very specifically and to share substantiation or proof. What other funding have you secured, right? If you're coming in with a request to fill in a gap, we're very interested in knowing what other funding have you brought to bear, what other funding have you secured, and what is that funding going to be used for? One of the things that I like to emphasize and re-emphasize is that CDBG in particular is the one grant out of the 4 grants that's very specifically assessed by statute for its timely use. So we look for projects, we look for efforts that need funding, and that can assure us that funding will be spent very quickly upon granting or upon award. These funds aren't designed for sitting and waiting for other funding to come to fruition. So it's very much designed and intended to be either the totality of a project, the funding of a project, or the last bit, the last gap funding in a larger project. So a project of the type that you're describing can be very complicated if you're seeking or if you've secured other sorts of funding and you're coming to CDBG to plug a hole. That's going to be a conversation that we want to have with you and to get a firm understanding of what position CDBG would take part in, provided that it's eligible. But if you're coming to us with 100% of the need, we look at how much you're asking for. We look at how ready you are to spend that money within 2-3 years. Again, it's a very time-sensitive grant that is not designed at all to hold as a reservation while you look for other funding, right? Or while you're still seeking to finalize your design on your project, et cetera. It's very time-sensitive. And to that, I will also say that, we look to fund projects that will help us pay and spend the allocation as quickly as possible. The CDBG grant is very, very restricted and bound by rules and requirements to not have funds on hand in excess. And really the benefit of that, or the drive and the goal for that, is to have the community benefit and enjoy the Community Development Block Grant as soon as those funds are made available for the community. The last thing I'll say to that is, if you have a specific idea and you want to assess, whether or not CDBG is a good fit, or maybe any number of the other grants, you can always reach out via the various sources, and you can set up an appointment to talk to me or any one of my team on the grants admin team, and to talk very informally as to what it is that you're thinking about doing. That's always an opportunity. We're very committed to providing technical assistance, particularly to our nonprofit partners, so that we can help equip them to be successful applicants for the CDBG application process. Okay, Andy.
We have about 6 more minutes left allocated for questions and answers, so we can go through as much as we can. The next question is from Lino Mars. CD6, Sun Valley, Arleta, and Panorama City desperately needs more resources and investment from the mayor and city council. What can CIFD do to work with council member Imelda Padilla to make such improvements?
What I can say we can do and we do is that we avail ourselves and make ourselves open to ongoing conversation. The technical assistance that I just mentioned a few moments ago, we have ongoing conversations with not only CD6, but all council district staff points on the Community Development Block Grant, on the Consolidated Plan in general. They have a direct line to myself, to my team, with respect to assessing an idea that might be brewing, needs in the community. And we have open and ongoing conversations, not only with Councilmember Padilla's staff and herself, but with the balance of the council district staff and the members themselves, where there's a comfort and a regularity with which they speak at the highest level with our general manager, our executive management team, and on down with respect to that advice and that feedback as far as how to get those needs met that fit within the confines of the community development block grant. So I would say, I would assure you that those conversations do happen to the extent that you have that regular conversation and that communication exchange with the council district to make your specific needs known to the council member or members. That's something that I would encourage you to continue to do, and to present opportunities for any council member to champion a project that you might have that they can stand behind and that they can advocate for to get funding in the comp plan. That's something that is not only seen, but it's encouraged. It's encouraged for particularly nonprofits to engage in those conversations with the council office. So just a few more, right, Andy? And I guess I would say that if your question doesn't get answered, we are transcribing this, we're recording this, but please also feel free to email us your question and we can answer that as well directly to you, so that you can have an opportunity, even after this meeting, to have your specific question addressed if we don't have time within the confines of this meeting.
The next question is from Jaimanat Fikadu. How much loan can one get for building, renewing for rent and low-income housing to get to meet the eligibility criteria?
I'm not quite sure what the idea is. I will respond this way. And again, feel free to reach out directly so we could flesh out your specific question or your idea. But again, specific to the community development block grant, which we talked about there being an annual application for, it specifically funds public facilities, neighborhood improvements, things of that nature. And loans are provided to nonprofits and other city departments to make improvements on buildings, systems, etc., that extend the life of a facility, improve the use of the facility for an extended period of time. So when you're talking about those loans, those CDBG loans for specific public improvements, capital projects, these are all synonymous terms. There is an understanding or an exchange. Your project is eligible. We award you an amount, and you spoke specifically to limits. There is no I will refer to our expenditure policy for the community development block grant, and there are specific minimum thresholds for applications that we vet, that we review for eligibility, that also speak to the limits that we're looking for. We try to assess projects that are larger versus smaller. So you're talking about projects that are valued or at size that, several hundreds, thousands of dollars, right? We want to be able to make impactful investments in capital projects and public infrastructure and neighborhood improvements that have an impactful result, right? We see the value in smaller scale grants, but it really becomes a hard balancing act when you're trying to get funding out there, when you're trying to get contracts executed, etc. We try to strike a balance between identifying projects that are impactful, that are catalytic, that are large enough that the staff that it takes, the people power that it takes to get funds on the street and to make them accessible, it begs those minimum thresholds. So we're looking at projects for capital projects that are in the several $100,000. So you kind of want to keep that in mind as well when we're talking about a capital project at a nonprofit owned building, for example, and you're looking to improve the building infrastructure, etc. We want you to identify the totality of what you need. You need a new roof. You need a new HVAC, you need new windows, you need a new generator. It could be any number of things, right? ADA access improvements, elevator replacement, things of that nature. Size it to where you really are extending the life of that building. And in exchange, to the extent you get awarded, we apply a very specific formula to the grant that you're provided, where at minimum you agree to exchange services to a certain number of people for at least 5 years, depending on the size of the loan, to up to 20 years worth of service. That's the exchange. The loan that we provide to you to make those upgrades to your building, this fictional nonprofit, is required to pay back in service for the length of that time for an agreed upon number of households for that benefit. It becomes very specific and complicated very fast. And again, what I would say to finish that response is, we can set up a call, we can set up a meeting to go over specifically how that might impact your decision to apply for, in this case, a community development block grant award.
And I think we are at time for finishing questions and answers.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. And thank you, folks, for stayed with us for the duration of the meeting. Just in the last couple of minutes, I know I would be remiss if I didn't speak to this slide, and my colleague Madeline would kill me if I didn't speak to this slide. Part of our community outreach efforts, along and including this community meeting, is inviting you to take some time out, literally 5 minutes or less, to complete a survey, right? And I'll speak a little bit to the slide, and then we'll go back to the slide where you can access the service through the QR code system. But we wanted to specifically guide you through how to, in a more informed way, complete that survey. And by the way, it's available in both English and Spanish through those two QR codes. But we encourage you to access some more information and description on what the comp plan is funding, just sort of that array of projects and the specifics by line item, so that you can then consider that information. And you have the direction here to click on that hyperlink to get a little bit more specific information on a by line item basis for that budget document. And you'll be looking at footnotes, etc. But again, we encourage you to access that information to get a little bit more of a fleshed out sense of what these various projects are about and what the proposal is to fund. And that'll help with completing the survey so that you can provide the most thoughtful feedback possible. And again, as I've mentioned, transcripts, summaries of this meeting, the next meeting that we'll be holding on Thursday of this week, emails compiled, etc. All of that will be assessed. It will be collected and shared in a summary with not only with our local decision makers, but also at the federal level when we submit the action plan for review. So I would ask that we do one last share of the page where the survey can be accessed. Yeah. So you'll see here, are those called QR codes, Madeline? Or what are those symbols called?
Yes, but Kevin has also linked all of the clickable links to the surveys in the chat in the 10 languages that they are available. And I do just want to emphasize again what Rebecca was pointing to, that there is a hyperlink where you can view all of the individual proposed lines, a description of each of those projects, and the amount proposed to be allocated to that line. I know we gave a very general overview during the presentation, but you'll have an opportunity to view in that very precise manner. And at the end of the survey, you can also provide an additional comment if you would like, which we will make part of all of the submissions to the mayor's office and the CLA for review with this plan.
Thank you so much, Madeline. And I will say, from very personal experience, the survey is very easy to navigate. It's designed in a way to get your feedback at that high level. But to Madeline's point, there are also opportunities and spaces to make your specific comments known. It's presented in a way that's very accessible to folks in English and in other languages as well. I happened to complete my survey in Spanish just to see how I could navigate it, and it's very very accessible. I do live in the city, so I find it's my duty and my responsibility to provide feedback, not as a bureaucrat, but as a resident of the city, a lifelong resident of the city. I will wrap it up here. I do want to thank everybody again that signed on a timely basis, stuck with us throughout the duration, and posed your questions, provided your comments, your very important and valid comments. I will wrap it up here. I want to thank you once again. I want to thank our colleagues in the mayor's office for joining us, for welcoming us and staying on with us. And I want to wish you all a good evening. One last plug. If you want to hear a repeat of this, you're fully welcome to join us on Thursday. We give a couple of opportunities for people that can't join us today. Join us on Thursday. If you want to join us again on Thursday, you're fully welcome. You're not precluded from doing that. But please share. Invite folks that maybe didn't have a chance to make it tonight. They can make it on Thursday night. We'll be sharing the same exact information and also providing a space for questions and answers as well. Thank you all. Have a great evening and stay safe.